College and pro football might look like the same game, but the two are playing from completely different rulebooks, different catching rules, penalties, and even tackling. But why? The story of the pivotal moment that forever split the sport in two begins with one of the differences hiding in plain sight, something casual fans may never have even noticed, painted right on the field: the hash marks. When a freak sub-zero blizzard had buried Chicago in feet of snow, threatening to cancel the 1932 championship game between the Chicago Bears and the Portsmouth Spartans, the desperate Bears owner George Halas moved the championship indoors to the Chicago Stadium. But because this arena was built for hockey and boxing, not gridiron football, the makeshift field was only 80 yards long. But the biggest issue was the width of the field. The sidelines of this makeshift field ran dead flush against solid wooden retaining boards. At the time, the rules dictated that wherever a player was tackled, the next play started exactly from that spot. If a player was pushed out of bounds, they'd restart close to the sideline. In an open field, that was fine. But inside Chicago Stadium, players would suddenly be crushed against wooden barricades. So, to stop his players from being hospitalized, the coaches and referees instituted a temporary emergency rule. If a play ended near the boards, the ball would be moved inward, away from the walls, to a set of painted dashes. By the end of the game, which was an insane story in its own right, the NFL realized the temporary safety measure actually improved the flow of the game, so they made it permanent. And in doing so, the split away from the NCAA rules began in haste. While the NCAA and the NFL fields both have hash marks, the two organizing bodies have entirely different philosophies on where those hash marks belong. In college football, the hash marks are a whopping 40 feet apart. When a play ends outside of the hash marks, the ball is placed on the closest hash mark for the next down. This creates a massive asymmetrical battlefield. The college play caller looks at the field and sees a short side and a massive wide side. The sprawling expanse of green grass is the entire engine behind the modern college spread offense. You can isolate a defender in space, run complex horizontal handoffs, and keep the defense scrambling to cover incredible amounts of territory. It's a track meet. It's why college games average a wildly entertaining 55 points per game. It is a wide open shooting gallery. But the NFL? There is no wide side. Pro hash marks are a suffocating 18 feet 6 inches apart, barely the width of the goalposts. As soon as an NFL play ends, the ball is essentially reset dead center. Distance is gained, but the horizontal advantage is wiped clean. This turns the NFL into an unpredictable brawl. Because the offense has equal room to maneuver on the left or right, NFL defenses have to be ready for anything. And when they plan for the run and the offense rolls out a pass, things can get messy, which means players are prone to mistakes. Mistakes like pass interference. But depending on the level of the game, the punishment for pass interference can vary drastically. Today, if an NFL defender commits pass interference, the penalty isn't measured in set yardage. The referee walks the ball down the field and places it exactly where the mugging occurred. If you tackle a guy 45 yards downfield to prevent a catch, the offense is instantly awarded those 45 yards and an automatic first down. The only exception is the end zone, which places the ball at the agonizing 1-yard line. But college football looked at that rule and went in a completely different direction. Today, the NCAA rigidly caps their pass interference penalties at 15 yards. Why? Because college players aren't hardened professionals. They're 19-year-old kids, still finding their footing on a massive stage. The NCAA determined it was far too punitive to hand a team 40 free yards just because a panicked, exhausted teenager made a sloppy mistake in the heat of the moment. This philosophical divide over intent versus mistakes bleeds into defensive holding too, when a defender grabs a player before the ball is even thrown. In the NFL, it's a minor 5-yard penalty and an automatic first down. In college, the penalty is actually steeper at 10 yards, plus the automatic first down. So, the NFL successfully engineered a rulebook that protected receivers while the ball was in the air. But what happens the millisecond the ball is actually caught? In college, making a spectacular catch and falling to the turf instantly ends the play. But in the NFL, touching the ground doesn't make you safe. It just paints a target on your back. To understand why, you have to look at the foundational philosophy of both leagues. College football at its core was built as the guardian of young men. When a 19-year-old running back hits a hole, trips over his left tackle's foot, and his knee grazes the Bermuda grass, the referee instantly blows the whistle. The play is dead. The line of scrimmage is set. The NCAA relies on a system with very little room for error, which inherently protects the players. All a college defense has to do is briefly force the ball carrier to the turf, and the threat is neutralized. The NCAA's forgiving nature extends to the boundaries too. If a college receiver leaps into the air near the sideline, catching a bullet of a pass, he only needs to get one single foot down in bounds for it to be a legal completion. It is a spectacular feat of athleticism, but it allows the player's natural momentum to carry him safely out of bounds and away from danger. But the NFL isn't protecting amateur students. They're fielding highly paid warriors, and the fans paying premium ticket prices don't want to see a play blown dead just because a guy tripped over his own shoelaces. In the professional game, you don't just have to get a player down. You have to actively wrestle them to the dirt and keep them there. This is the brutal reality of the NFL's down by contact rule. It is a direct callback to the classic gladiatorial roots of the sport. If an NFL running back slips and faceplants while holding the football, the play is still live. He's not down. If he has the sheer physical awareness to realize a defender hasn't touched him yet, he can scramble right back to his feet and sprint for the end zone, while the defense desperately swarms him. The ground cannot cause a fumble. But in the NFL, the ground cannot stop a play either. It requires undeniable physical combat to blow the whistle. Making the physical game this brutal meant that every single inch of the field mattered. But what happens when you suddenly find yourself needing one final desperate kick to win the game? That brings us to the most agonizing part of the rulebook, the geometry of the kicking game. When the game is locked in a tight, late-quarter battle, coaches are forced to ask their kickers a high-stakes mathematical question. Exactly how far can you kick this ball before the risk outweighs the reward? In the college ranks, the rules are built to be forgiving. If an NCAA kicker attempts a 50-yard field goal and the ball shanks wide left, the referee blows the whistle and the ball is turned over to the defense at the original line of scrimmage. The team missed out on the points, but the geographic punishment is contained. But the NFL operates on the razor's edge of risk and ruin. If an NFL kicker misses that exact same 50-yard attempt, the defense doesn't get the ball at the line of scrimmage. The referee marches the ball all the way back to the literal physical spot where the kicker's foot struck the leather, typically 7 or 8 yards further back. A missed deep kick instantly gifts the opposing offense incredible, terrifying field position. It forces NFL head coaches into agonizing decisions, weighing the physical leg strength of their kicker against the massive geographic penalty of a miss. This obsession with kicking mathematics eventually forced the NFL to confront a historically embarrassing problem. For decades, both leagues suffered an incredibly dull sequence of play immediately following the euphoria of a touchdown. It was the point after touchdown, the PAT. The easiest, most automatic score in all of professional sports. Originally, the PAT was snapped from the 2-yard line. It was a 20-yard chip shot that professional kickers could make in their sleep. It wasn't a play. It was a commercial break disguised as football. The NFL realized that fans weren't paying to watch a formality. So, in 2015, the league made a massive unilateral decision to eradicate the boredom. They pushed the PAT all the way back to the 15-yard line. Suddenly, the automatic chip shot became a tense 33-yard gamble in the freezing winds of winter stadiums. It brought the potential for failure back into the equation. It also forced NFL coaches to seriously consider the two-point conversion, a brutal single-play offensive shootout from the 2-yard line when the offense tries to muscle their way back into the end zone. But the NCAA looked at that drama and decided they wanted absolutely no part of it. College football chose to preserve its amateur tradition. They kept both the PAT and the two-point conversion right up at the 3-yard line. The NCAA isn't interested in artificially making kicks harder for 19-year-olds. They prioritize keeping the game moving and letting the offensive units focus on running up the scoreboard. But no matter how perfectly you manage the clock or calculate the risk of a kick, sometimes 60 minutes of combat just isn't enough to separate two elite teams. And when the clock hits triple zeros and the score is tied, the philosophical differences between the NCAA and the NFL turn into outright warfare. The NFL views a tied game as an unresolved conflict that must be ended as ruthlessly as possible. They essentially mandate a sudden death fifth quarter. The exhausted, battered players are forced back onto the field to wage a pure war of attrition. The rules stipulate that both teams will get a chance at possessing the ball, even if a touchdown is scored in the first drive. After that, these behemoths will just keep grinding each other into the frozen turf until someone finally breaks. It is a terrifying, high-stakes gauntlet where the simple flip of a coin can literally make or break an entire season. But college football looks at that brutal, sudden death attrition and rejects it entirely. The NCAA prioritizes fairness. They want every student-athlete to have a shot. When the regulation ends, there is no kickoff. The clock is completely turned off. Instead, the referee simply marches the ball down to the opponent's 25-yard line and hands it to the offense. It is an orderly, high-speed shootout. Both teams are guaranteed a possession to match the other. If the game remains deadlocked after 2 rounds, it devolves into a frenzied, sudden death duel of 2-point conversions. College overtime isn't a grinding war of field position. It is a rapid-fire test of pure scoring ability. But before any game can even reach overtime, the rules of both leagues must be enforced by the ultimate, most controversial wildcards on the field: the officials. In the NFL, every single micro-interaction matters. A toe scraping the paint, a ball shifting slightly in a receiver's hands, or a knee grazing the grass can change the fate of a multi-billion-dollar franchise. The NFL inherently recognizes that its human referees are fallible, so they weaponized technology to police them. They gave NFL head coaches the iconic red challenge flag. If a coach believes the referee made a catastrophic error, he hurls that red flag onto the field, halting the game and triggering a high-tech legal review. But he only gets 2 challenges per game, plus a third if a previous challenge is successful. Much like the play clock, managing your challenges has become a critical, agonizing part of NFL strategy. Do you burn your final challenge early on a contested throw, or do you save it for a potential game-winning touchdown catch later? The NCAA, true to its roots, retains a much more old-school approach. While college football is a multi-million-dollar industry, it still clings to the spirit of the amateur game. Instead of relying on coaches to throw flags and trigger legal battles, every single play is quietly reviewed by experts in a booth high above the stadium. A college coach does get 1 challenge per game, but it is rarely used. The NCAA prefers an environment where the game flows under the watchful eye of an invisible authority, preserving the illusion that the referee's word is the final law of the land. Which game is better? That entirely depends on what kind of war you want to watch. Though both leagues charge toward the exact same end zones with the same leather ball, their rulebooks have mutated to serve entirely different masters, turning college football into a sprawling, high-scoring cavalry charge meticulously designed to protect its youth. Meanwhile, the NFL is a close-quarters knife fight born on a frozen dirt floor. A brutal high-speed crucible where margins are measured in millimeters. The clock is a psychological weapon, and the rules demand undeniable, definitive combat. The game might look the same, but the battlefields couldn't be more different. If you want to hear the full, wildly influential story of the 1932 NFL playoff game that birthed the hashmarks, click the video on the screen, or check out this other video you might like. To never miss an untold tale from football's chaotic history, make sure to like and subscribe to Gridiron Evolution. Thanks for watching.